everybody, this is Ginger Bandine with Pinnacle Health Informatics, and I'm just going to go over real briefly this caseload report that we talked about today in the user group. As I demonstrated in the user group today, this caseload report was made for options. You'll see their icon here in the top left corner, but they had a lot of things they wanted to capture on this report and things that they wanted to bring to people's attention if there were issues. And so we decided to use these indicators as a way to call attention to things in the report without having a ton of color that gets kind of sometimes overwhelming to people. So we use these indicators, and then the other feature that we use in this report are tooltips, which are really handy things. So for example, under assessment in the rank 1 diagnosis, we have the code here, but if you hover over it, you can see the full name of the diagnosis, which can be kind of useful for people. One thing I will say is with the tooltips, because someone might print this report, we also included like a little key up in the top here for each tooltip so that you would know what it means even if you couldn't hover over it. So it's one thing to keep in mind is what information are people going to need when they print it off versus what can they just see in the moment when they're looking at something. So it's one thing to think about. So I'm just going to go over really briefly how to add an indicator and set an indicator up and how to do tooltips. So for an indicator, if you go over to your toolbox, you have something called an indicator, and you just add that wherever in the report you want it. And then we'll just look at this indicator. So I'm just clicking on it. Oh, first, that's a good reminder. You have to be in design mode. So I'll go over to design mode, click on my indicator, and then if you right click, you have indicator properties. And so there's a tooltip on your indicator properties, but first let's just talk about indicators. So you can set a value for your indicator based on a formula. So I'm just going to go into the formula for this. So this little indicator looks first to see if someone has a treatment plan expiration date that's basically like a null value, which we reprogram in the Pinnacle data warehouse with a big date that basically means there isn't one. So this formula is saying if there's no expiration date on the treatment plan, give this formula have a value of 1. Otherwise, if there's a value, if the days due is less than 0, meaning this treatment plan was due earlier than now, it's already late, then it's giving it a value of 2. And then otherwise, if it's going to expire in the next 90 days, it gives it a value of 1. And then I just programmed in like a 4 as sort of a placeholder for anything else that would fall outside those, which hopefully nothing would. All right, so that's the formula that generates a value, and then once you have a value, you can use that to set ranges that will change the icon and the color of the indicator. So here for 2s, it'll be a red little diamond, and for 1s, it'll be a khaki triangle. And then the other thing that I've done with indicators is when you highlight the gauge, which is the outer box around the little indicator, you can go over here into your properties menu, and there's an option called visibility. So you can say whether or not to show that indicator if it, for example, if the indicator is fine, like if you had a value that meant everything's fine, then you could hide those so they don't sort of distract people from the ones which aren't fine. So here's an indicator that has, for example, an expression, so we can look at that real quick, that hides it. So if the assessment, this is an indicator that indicates if an assessment was signed after a treatment plan effective date, and this is just saying if it wasn't, and so it's not an issue, then it's hidden. So that's indicators, and then the other thing is tooltips. So as you saw on the indicator, there's a place to put a tooltip, but on any field you can put a tooltip. So if you go in, let's say, to this diagnosis field, you always want to, in my experience, you want to click on placeholder properties because that gives you more options than just expressions. So I'm going to click on placeholder properties, and here's this option for a tooltip, and you can have it driven off of a formula. So here it's saying, for example, if there's no axis 1, there is no tooltip. Otherwise, use the tooltip of the full name of that diagnosis. So those are just a couple things you can use to make your report more robust when you're trying to fit a lot of information on one screen. So tooltips and indicators. Thanks.